Today, on the third episode of Root Talks, we're excited to welcome Ms. Devika Cariapa, an award-winning children's author from bringing India's history and culture to life. From archaeology to folklore, her stories inspire curiosity and a love for learning. Join us as we dive into her journey, creative processes, and the power of storytelling to connect generations. Well, good afternoon, Ms. Cariapa. How are you?
I'm very well and excited to be here, Jeremy.
That's nice to hear. Well, to start things off, how was your experience at Rue Literary Fest?
I can't tell you how excited I was to come here and how excited I am now that the sessions are over. Everyone was so involved and engaged in both the session and the debate that I was a judge at. It just gave me a sense of everybody connecting. So immensely satisfying.
That's wonderful to hear, actually. Taking it back, what inspired you to start writing and authoring children's books?
It's a journey that actually began a very long time ago. I was training to be an archaeologist. And two things happened. One is, archaeology tends to be a very dry subject, particularly prehistoric archaeology.
Strenuous work, yes.
Yeah. It's physically strenuous, and you're looking at bones and stones and really dusty bits of information. And the first thing that came to me was when I was looking at them, and we had marvelous professors, and each of them, say you're looking at a stone tool, and you're thinking, oh my, this looks like nothing. And then the process would be revealed to you, how that stone actually tells you a story about how humans have used that particular object as something, a tool, for instance. That is the beauty of archaeology. It allows you to look at material remains and analyze what happened tens of thousands of years ago. That was the first thing that came to mind, that there were so many stories emerging from these dry as dust kind of artifacts and remains of the past. And the other, and that really excited me, and I thought, everyone should know this, children should know this. The other thing that happened was that I realized that academics are really busy people. And although they do marvelous work, especially my professors were all world-renowned in their field, nobody really knew, generally the public did not know what they were doing and how important their work was. So in my mind somewhere, I had this idea that at some point I must write all this down, especially for the young people of our country. They really need to know, because material remains, as you know, are everywhere. You've been taken to museums, I'm sure,
Yes.
where things are not necessarily in their context. You don't really know what you're looking at. Someone has to explain it to you. The captions are not necessarily...
It's more of an interpretation.
Exactly. So that's where it came to me many years ago, but I actually started writing fairly recently.
That's wonderful. And I know that most of your books, they've won numerous awards, such as the Hindu Young World Good Books, which is in 2018. Take us through this process. I mean, does winning the awards have any impact on your work, or do you just continue to write for the love of it?
That's a really good question. I have been very lucky because I've won some pretty major awards, one of them being the Hindu, that was the first one that I won, and subsequently won the Sahitya Academy Award, which is like
2019,
the holy grail of books, the Bal Sahitya Puraskar. It's very encouraging because when I'm writing non-fiction, I'm writing history non-fiction for children. So I'm not really sure that is what children enjoy, but now I know that they do enjoy it. So you feel slightly validated, and you do feel validated because the awards juries are very eminent people in their own. If you read the names of the juries of most of these awards, they're extremely eminent people. Yes. So if they found something worthy of an award there, it is, as I said, it's validating. But having said that, I will continue to do what I do, even with or without the awards.
That is moving.
Yeah.
Well, how do you approach the challenge of simplifying complex historical narratives in your books, and without losing their essence or depth? Trying to narrate the story or trying to convey it through these complex ideas into your own words. How do you do that?
Oh, that's the challenge of writing nonfiction is the research.
Hmm.
So for every page that I've written, the research has been, you have to do, there's no two ways about it. You research, and you research. Till one day something will emerge from that research. One little idea will emerge. For instance, my latest book, it's called A Children's History of India in
Yes.
100 Objects. That was a huge challenge because I wanted to tell the story of Indian history through tangible remains, through objects. At a point, I had written them all down on little index cards, and I had 300 index cards.
Hmm.
And I had to pare it down to 100. That was the challenge.
How do you
because
do
there
it?
is so much information.
Okay.
So, to answer your question, the only way you can get a simple narrative, it's sort of counterintuitive, is if you do an enormous amount of research, really know what goes into that subject, and then pull out a simple story from it. Then you won't lose the essence of the story.
So how long does that take? I mean, 300 index cards is pretty long.
Each of my books takes me up to 2.5, 3 years.
3 years?
Yes.
Wow. I mean, well, children are honest and extremely expensive, you know. What is the most surprising or profound reaction you received from a child about your work?
I think the most complimentary thing that I hear is that, we hated history till we found your book.
Yeah.
Now we really enjoy it, or words to that effect. A number of children have come up to me during sessions and said, the way you put it across, like I could bear history now, that sentiment. I look for that. I really look for that because my mission in life is to make children know and understand their history and not be threatened by it, because there's a common perception that history is just sort of kings and queens and dates and really dull facts that have to be sort of memorized and spewed out. I want them to understand there's a context and there are exciting stories in that context, and the context is still relevant to them. So they have a stake in it.
Yeah, that must be helpful to a lot of children. And actually glad that you're bringing history into today's world and changing the game. Well, I'm not going to bore you with any more questions to wrap this up. What, in your books, Children's History in 100 Tangible Artifacts, how did you select these objects? And what challenges did you face in ensuring that they tell a comprehensive story of India's past?
I've already touched on that. I said I had 300 and I could have gone on, but it would have taken me maybe another 2 years to write the book.
Yeah.
And my editors were like chomping at the bit. I chose a chronological history. History is not always like from prehistory to modern times. It goes off into little dashes and darts and so on. So I chose to write from prehistory to modern times.
Okay.
And then I chose objects that I felt that were available to children, young people to see. Maybe they'd see it in a museum, or they'd see it in a monument somewhere. Or I tried to pick as many as common artifacts as possible. That wouldn't be impossible for an Indian child to witness. And then I tried to fit in from as many parts of India as possible. Say north, south, east, and west, so that it was sort of an inclusive of our geography as well. So that's how the 100 objects got chosen.
And do some of these works come in your sightseeing in Bangalore's ancient monument histories? I know you're fond of visiting them.
Yeah. All over India, actually. I have
Okay.
traveled the length and breadth of India, and I've seen, I would say, many of them, but there are many more still to be seen, because this country it's what they call an embarrassment of riches. There's so much. It is really it's overwhelming. So some of that at least is in the book.
So you've traveled all across India, as you've mentioned. How can one who is really interested in history start things off? I mean, where's a place where they can really find cultural richness that's hidden away?
I would say start where you are.
Start where you are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Start in Coimbatore. Go explore your state. I was mentioning earlier today about hero stones, which are commonly found all over Tamil Nadu. You'd find them on roadsides, you'd find them in temple courtyards. They're a rich source of history of the common people. Start with them, and there are marvelous museums all over the state. Wherever you are in India, start where you are, would be my advice.
Do you see your work as a bridge to the past and the present, maybe the future? If so, how do you build that connection?
I think it's a work of a historian. Somebody very wisely once said, if you don't know where you've come from, then you don't know where you are. And if you don't know where you are, you don't know where you're going. That is the work of a historian, to find where we've come from in order to discover who we really are. If you think about it, every one of us is a historical being, a walking, talking historical being. And why do I say that? Because all the choices we're making today, the clothes that you're wearing, the language that we're speaking, you go home and you speak a different language to your parents. You celebrate certain festivals, you eat certain food. Every one of those decisions has been taken for us sometime in the past. So we are historical beings. And if we don't understand where we are today, as historical beings occupying the contemporary world, we will not be able to go into the future making sensible decisions. We see the world as we see it today. Say the conflict in Israel, Palestine.
Yes.
How would you understand it without a historical context? How would you understand why Russia and Ukraine are battling today if you don't know the historical context? So once you've established and you've set a context for yourself, you will be able to go into the future as a better citizen, taking better, more informed decisions for your future. So in that respect, yes, I do see my work as something that sets up a bridge between the past and the future.
It's amazing to hear. I believe you used the term historical beings as to refer to all of us. So with that being said, who are some of the historical beings that played a really vital role in your life?
Do you mean from the past or historical beings walking around?
Have your pick.
Well, from the past, I've been very inspired by tales of adventurers, of any people who went beyond their immediate environment. I don't mean fabulously wealthy kings and queens and so on. I mean ordinary people like merchants and sailors, religious leaders who walked the length and breadth of India, say, merchants who sailed, from South India, they sailed to Southeast Asia.
Yes.
Not an easy journey. Merchants who sailed from the Harappan civilization to West Asia. They set up adventurous sort of ancestry for us and made India the rich and sort of a very diversified kind of culture that we have today is thanks to people like them. So I admire them. Those are the people that I would be inspired by.
And present?
Presently, I would say, on a very personal note, my father's been a huge inspiration. He was a soldier, but he was actually a historian.
Oh, okay.
So he managed to combine that persona, and I saw that his knowledge of history informed his very successful career as a soldier. So that taught me that everyone should learn history. It just makes them better at whatever they do, whatever they choose to do in life, whether they become journalists or politicians or administrators. A knowledge of history gives you a solid base for your life.
So you would say that your closest person would be a father?
Let's say it's the person that I most admired, historically speaking. And I derived a great deal of inspiration from him.
Okay. And how was your childhood like? Especially growing up with such a respected and admired man.
My childhood was very interesting because I lived, I'm currently living in my 25th house.
Okay.
So you can imagine how many times I've moved. I also married a soldier in the sense he's a pilot, so we moved equally. And we love traveling. So add all that to the mix. I have traveled the length and breadth of India and lived in most states. So it's been a wonderful childhood. Wonderful childhood. Yeah. We had amazing schools, really inspiring teachers, other figureheads in our family, older people who were very inspiring for the work that they did. things were very simple when we were growing up because it was more like a socialist state, India. It's not what you see today. You kids see a different kind of an India than we saw. Everything was very limited.
Okay.
You had, to be very specific, there were 2 kinds of cars on the roads and there were 3 brands of shampoo. You had to choose between the 3. So it was a very different world, a very simple world.
Very simple.
Yeah.
So what was your favorite place out of the 25 houses that you've been moving around?
Favorite place?
Yeah, favorite place, favorite house. I mean,
my favorite place is actually Coorg, from where I have, that's where I lived. That's where I'm from. And my grandmother's house was my favorite house.
Favorite house.
Back in Coorg. Yes.
Okay.
It was a homestead.
It was a homestead.
Than a home.
Okay.
Yeah.
So was it more of a rural type of area, or do you enjoy going around the fields, or?
We did a lot of that.
A lot of that.
Yeah. It was it was very isolated.
Very
Your
isolated.
nearest neighbors were 40 minutes away and so on. But you managed to live a really rich and fulfilling life.
I mean, is that the same case you see today, or it's completely different with the new technologies being brought up?
Yes, things have changed a
Things
lot.
have changed a lot.
Apart from the technologies, there's also the India has changed as a country. It has progressed in so many ways economically, but the differences remain, which is troubling in a sense. You see differences between rich and poor, between, I wish for India, I wish that gap would be much smaller.
Much smaller. We could look forward to it. What makes archaeology fun for students interested in the same? What do you think is the first step that they should take to maybe dabble a bit of history?
Are you asking me as a career, for someone to take up as a career, or just because of their
Just for the
interest?
love of history.
Oh, the sky's the limit.
Sky's the limit.
They could read. They could. There's a lot of good information available now on archaeology and history. They could read the books, and you have these marvelous TV channels, the
Yes.
Discovery Channel, and so on. If you watch one documentary on the Discovery Channel, it's the lifetime's work of that particular archaeologist.
Yeah.
30 years of work would be in 30 minutes
It's 30
of
minutes.
that, of that. So if you look at it in that sense, there's a great richness of information available. So you're all lucky. You're very lucky that you have all this available to you.
Would you say that compared to online and books, a lot of information is being left out in terms of history? Like the book could have more information rather than watching it on a history channel.
You want me to compare books and online?
Yeah.
History is a discipline,
Okay.
like any other. It's like physics or mathematics. So the person who writes a book on history, a historian, a trained historian, has been through the rigor of the discipline.
Okay.
He's or she has not just read a couple of history books and declared themselves to be a historian. So there's a lot that goes into the writing of that book.
So it's harder than it seems.
Of course it is. It's a discipline, as I said.
Discipline.
You wouldn't expect a physicist to produce information which will not be challenged.
Yes.
If a physicist comes with a theory, your question should be, where is your evidence? Where is the proof? Where is your experimentation? Similarly, historians are asked those kind of questions by their peers. It's peer reviewed. So the rigor that goes into the writing of a book on history by a historian, not by somebody who's dabbling in the field, is as much information as you would need on that subject up to that point. It should be. Whereas online, there are many slippages. The person presenting the information online may not necessarily be a trained historian or an archaeologist. So I would urge caution as to who the person is who's presenting this information. What are the bona fides of that person? Are they professional historians or archaeologists? Who are they? And then you take up your information from there. So slippages, there will be. Even books, who's written the book, right?
So there has to be more research done than actually doing
I
some
would
research.
urge
Yeah.
caution.
Caution.
Take a look at who's written the book. Would you read a physics book written by a comedian?
Yeah.
Would you take that seriously
Yeah. No.
as a book that you would refer to for instance, you know. I'm just being a little frivolous, but you understand the point I'm making. Take a look at who's written the book and what information, their bibliography, whether they've used primary or secondary sources, which sources have they used. Question that and then read the book.
I mean, that's all for today. It was fascinating to hear all this talk about your learning journey, inspiring the most of us, actually. Well, thank you so much. Please do check out her latest book, which is a children's history of 100 tangible artifacts. And thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Jeremy. It was a privilege.
Thank you so much.